My name is Sarah. The first part of this story takes place around 1999. We had just started our final week of 8th grade. I had just finished my lunch break and was heading to maths class. My building was on the other side of the school from my lockers, so I had to walk quite a bit. On my way, I saw this kid named Tommy. He was in the year below us, and I've seen him around a few times. This kid was the classic loner. He wore glasses, was very short, and as scrawny as a kid can possibly be. He got picked on a lot. On this particular day, he was being physically beaten up. The bullies had thrown him on the ground and continually kicked and punched him. It made me really sad. Since I'm a small girl, there was nothing I could really do. Even telling teachers would result in nothing. Not at this school. After the beating subsided, the bullies then stole his money and left him crying on the ground. I walked over to him to see if he was okay. I felt so bad for him. I pulled out $5 from my pocket and handed it to him. "Here," I said. "Make sure you get something to eat." He seemed quite surprised. I was probably the first person to talk to him at this school that wasn't trying to bash him. He gave me a smile, and I left to go to class. 4 years went by, and I almost never saw him. When I did, he was usually getting savagely attacked. He clearly didn't make any friends. I didn't see him at all through 10th or 11th grade. I assumed he left. It was now 2003, our graduation year, and we were all getting pretty excited, although I was more anxious. I put a lot of pressure on myself to do well, as I was fairly smart and had a lot of expectation on me. One Tuesday, I had a free period and decided to go down to the computer lab to study. I did this a lot. I was always by myself because my friends didn't give any craps, and they were just most likely hanging out, gossiping somewhere. All the computers were in the basement. They were set out in a long hallway, side by side. This time, I was the only one in the entire basement. I had been there for about 25 minutes when a siren blared through the loudspeaker. It was a very strange sounding siren, nothing like the normal lunch bell. It wasn't the fire alarm, I was sure of that. It confused me until I remembered that a few months ago we did a lockdown drill, and I was fairly certain that this was the alarm for it. Is this a drill? I thought. The principal then came over the loudspeaker. "Commence lockdown procedure. This is not a drill." I couldn't believe it. After a few minutes of contemplating my actions, I decided to get under my desk. I got quite scared. The fact that I was completely alone was terrifying. And since I live in America, the likelihood of a gunman roaming the school was very plausible. This was before everyone had cell phones. I certainly didn't, so there was no way of contacting anyone outside the basement for information. I listened for activity, but the basement was so confined. I was pretty sure there wasn't even a window. I probably wasn't going to be able to hear anything. I stayed under my desk, curled up into a ball for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then the basement door flung open. The most horrifying part was the force that was applied to the door. It wasn't a casual way to open a door. There was anger behind it. The person proceeded to walk down the stairs in a slowly manner. I would expect someone running for their life to cut the bullshit and get to hiding. Whoever this was, they weren't trying to hide. The computer lab is very long, and I was under my desk at the other end. I didn't look past the leg of the desk, which I was hiding behind. I just listened. He stopped at the bottom of the stairs, and I prayed for him to head back up. I was trying to be as quiet as possible, but it's so hard when you're scared for your life. The whimpering becomes almost uncontrollable. You resort to covering your mouth just to keep your crying internal. You think about everyone in your life and you think about never seeing them again. The person then began to step forward slowly. It felt like he was walking for ages. The steps got louder and louder as it got closer. I began crying more. When he was probably 5 feet away, he stopped. There was silence, and then he said, "Hello there." I let out a yelp, but continued to sit there because I was just so hysterical. I somehow hoped he was talking to someone else. "You're gonna die today," he said. I screamed and completely lost it. I jumped out and profusely pleaded for my life. "Don't kill me," I said. "Please." I was face to face with him. He was wearing a hoodie with a hood over his head. He was holding some kind of hunting rifle. The feeling I felt was indescribable. You can't think. I couldn't run if I wanted to. My muscles didn't work. He looked at me and made a little smile, and then began to raise his gun. I screamed so loud, and then he stopped. His face froze. I realized something when I looked at his face more carefully. It was clear. It was Tommy. We both stared at each other in shock. In a quiet voice I said, "Please, Tommy." There was a moment of silence. He then said, "Thank you," and lowered his gun. He turned around, walked up the stairs, and exited the room. I dropped to the ground, screaming and crying for the next half an hour. I couldn't even comprehend what had happened. The police eventually found me, and I found out the full story. Tommy had entered the school, shot 6 people, and killed 3. He then went home and shot himself in his bed. I, no doubt, would have been Tommy's 4th victim, but I wasn't, because 4 years ago, I helped a kid who needed it. It was very sad. Years of bullying had driven Tommy to become a murderer. I'll just say this: there's a million reasons to be nice.